Viktor Ivanov was, by all accounts, an unremarkable young man. At 21, he was just beginning to carve out his place in the world, though the world itself seemed to have little interest in him. He lived in a cramped apartment on the outskirts of Novosibirsk, a city that wore its brutalist architecture like a badge of honor against the endless Siberian cold. His days were spent juggling shifts at a dingy electronics repair shop and nights tinkering with salvage gadgets he found in dumpsters or online classifieds. Viktor had a knack for machines, an intuitive understanding of circuits and code that no formal education could teach. But talent alone wasn't enough to escape obscurity. He wasn't a soldier or a scientist. He wasn't rich or influential. He wasn't even particularly charismatic. His social circle consisted of his elderly landlord, a stray cat he named Boris, and an online forum where people discussed obscure Soviet-era technology. Yet there was something about Viktor, something buried deep beneath his quiet demeanor and perpetually messy hair, a stubborn curiosity that refused to let go of a question once it had latched on. It was this curiosity that would one day save billions of lives. The year 2025 had started like any other, a blur of routine and monotony. The world was still reeling from the aftermath of pandemics, economic instability, and political unrest. Humanity seemed more divided than ever, with nations retreating into isolationism and distrust simmering just below the surface of every international interaction. If someone had told Viktor that this fractured species would soon face its greatest challenge yet, he would have laughed bitterly and returned to soldering wires in his dimly lit workshop. But then came the arrival. It began as whispers on the internet, grainy videos of strange lights in the sky over remote parts of the world. Most dismissed them as hoaxes or misidentified drones. Then came the power outages. Entire cities plunged into darkness without warning, their grids fried by electromagnetic pulses of unknown origin. Satellites began malfunctioning in orbit, their feeds replaced by bursts of static and patterns that no one could decode. Governments scrambled to respond, but their efforts were disjointed and shrouded in secrecy. Viktor first heard about it while scrolling through his usual forum late one night. A user had posted a video claiming to show an enormous object hovering above the Amazon rainforest, its surface shimmering like liquid mercury under the moonlight. The thread exploded with speculation. Aliens, secret military experiments, natural phenomena. But Viktor couldn't tear his eyes away from the footage. There was something unsettlingly precise about the way the object moved, as though it were studying its surroundings with cold, mechanical intent. The next morning, the world woke up to undeniable proof. They were here. Dozens of ships appeared simultaneously across the globe, massive constructs that defied human understanding of physics and engineering. They loomed silently over major cities like harbingers of some ancient prophecy made real. Moscow, New York, Beijing, Tokyo, no continent was spared their ominous presence. Panic spread like wildfire as people abandoned their homes in search of safety that didn't exist. Governments declared states of emergency. Militaries mobilized. Conspiracy theorists screamed vindication from every corner of the internet. But the ships did not attack. Not immediately. They simply waited, casting long shadows over humanity's fragile civilizations as if daring them to make the first move. For Viktor, life had suddenly taken on an air of surreal urgency. He watched live streams from around the world with a mixture of awe and dread while Boris curled up on his lap, oblivious to the chaos unfolding outside their window. Questions swirled in his mind. Why were they here? What did they want? And why had they chosen now to reveal themselves? He didn't know it yet, but those questions, and his insatiable need for answers, would soon thrust him into a role he never could have imagined: humanity's unlikely savior. Viktor Ivanov was an anomaly in the chaos. While the world dissolved into hysteria, he remained calm, a lone island of rationality in a sea of fear. The alien ships had been hovering for weeks now, their presence a constant reminder of humanity's vulnerability. Governments had tried everything: diplomacy, military posturing, even desperate attempts at communication through mathematical sequences and light patterns. But the aliens remained silent. Their silence was maddening, and it drove humanity to the brink. But not Viktor. He had always been an observer, someone who watched and analyzed before acting. While others panicked, he studied. He pored over every piece of information he could find. Satellite images of the ships, electromagnetic readings, and even obscure conspiracy theories that suddenly didn't seem so far-fetched. His small apartment became a command center of sorts, filled with screens displaying live feeds from around the globe and notebooks crammed with hastily scribbled calculations. It wasn't long before others began to notice his clarity in the storm. It started with his online forum, where his posts dissecting the alien technology gained traction. Then came the scientists and engineers who reached out privately, sharing classified data in hopes that his insights might lead to a breakthrough. Before he knew it, Viktor had become an unintentional leader, a role he neither sought nor particularly wanted, but accepted out of necessity. The turning point came when a group of rogue scientists approached him with a startling revelation. They had intercepted faint signals emanating from one of the alien ships. The signals were complex and layered, unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. They weren't messages in the traditional sense. They were more like fragments of a vast operating system, a digital language that controlled the ships themselves. Viktor's mind raced as he analyzed the data. He realized that this was his moment, his chance to contribute something meaningful to humanity's survival. He didn't have the resources or manpower to decode the signals himself, but he knew how to organize those who did. And so, with nothing but an old laptop and an unshakable resolve, he founded the Coalition for Earth's Defense. The coalition was unlike any organization that had come before it. It wasn't bound by borders or politics. It was a global network of brilliant minds united by a single purpose: to protect Earth from its silent invaders. Viktor recruited hackers from underground networks, engineers from defunded space programs, and even disillusioned military officers who saw no hope in traditional methods. They worked in secret at first, communicating through encrypted channels and meeting in abandoned warehouses under cover of night. Under Viktor's leadership, the coalition grew rapidly. They established hidden research facilities in remote locations, Arctic outposts, deep-sea labs, even repurposed oil rigs far from prying eyes. They reverse-engineered alien technology from fragments recovered during skirmishes between human forces and alien drones. They built weapons and defenses unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Electromagnetic disruptors capable of scrambling alien systems, railguns that could punch through their seemingly impenetrable hulls, and stealth drones designed to infiltrate their ships undetected. But the coalition wasn't just about building weapons. It was about understanding their enemy. Viktor insisted on this point relentlessly. We can't defeat what we don't understand. Teams were dedicated solely to studying alien biology, from samples retrieved during rare encounters, and decoding their digital language, a task that consumed countless hours and cost more lives than anyone cared to admit. Despite the mounting challenges, Viktor remained steadfast. He became a symbol of hope for those who worked under him, a quiet genius who never wavered in his belief that humanity could prevail. His calm demeanor and sharp intellect inspired loyalty among his followers, many of whom would have otherwise given up in despair. Then came the signal. It was late one night when the coalition intercepted a new transmission from the alien fleet, this one far more powerful than anything they'd picked up before. It wasn't just fragments this time. It was a full-fledged message encoded in layers upon layers of complexity. Viktor's heart raced as he stared at the data scrolling across his screen. The message wasn't directed at humanity. It was communication between the ships themselves, a coordination signal for something massive. Viktor's team worked tirelessly to decode it, piecing together fragments like archaeologists reconstructing an ancient artifact. When they finally cracked it, their blood ran cold. The aliens weren't waiting idly above Earth. They were preparing for an invasion on a scale humanity couldn't begin to comprehend. The ships were coordinating their movements for a synchronized strike that would wipe out human civilization in mere hours. Viktor knew there was no time to waste. He called an emergency meeting of the coalition's leaders, scientists, engineers, strategists, all gathered around a holographic display showing the alien fleet's formation in real time. "This is it," Viktor said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "We have one chance to stop them." And so began humanity's final stand against its greatest threat. A battle not just for survival, but for the right to exist as free beings under their own sky. The world was on fire. The alien invaders, with their cold efficiency, had dismantled humanity's strongest defenses in a matter of days. Military bases that once stood as monuments to human power and ingenuity were now smoldering ruins. The Pentagon obliterated, NORAD silent, Beijing's military command center reduced to rubble. The aliens had targeted Earth's most fortified installations with surgical precision, using weapons that defied human comprehension. Beams of light that disintegrated steel, drones that moved faster than the eye could follow, and electromagnetic pulses that rendered entire armies blind and powerless. The coordinated strikes had left humanity reeling. Communication networks were crippled, power grids had failed, and the world's militaries were scattered and leaderless. The invaders didn't bother with cities or civilians, not yet. Their focus was on removing any organized resistance before humanity could even think to retaliate. It was a calculated strategy, one designed to instill despair. But Viktor Ivanov refused to despair. In the wake of the devastation, Viktor's Coalition for Earth's Defense had become humanity's last hope. What had started as a ragtag group of scientists and engineers working in secrecy was now an underground army of resistance fighters spread across the globe. They operated out of hidden bunkers, abandoned mines, and even deep-sea facilities, anywhere the aliens couldn't easily find them. And at their heart was Viktor, the unassuming young man from Novosibirsk who had somehow become the de facto leader of Earth's resistance. Viktor's calm in the face of annihilation was almost unnerving. While others panicked or mourned the loss of their homes and loved ones, he worked tirelessly, his mind racing with strategies and countermeasures. He didn't see himself as a hero or a leader. He was simply doing what needed to be done. The coalition had suffered its own losses during the initial attacks. Several of their research facilities had been discovered and destroyed, along with some of their brightest minds. But Viktor knew they couldn't afford to dwell on their grief. The aliens were relentless, but they weren't invincible. Over the past months, his team had made significant progress in reverse engineering fragments of alien technology recovered from downed drones and damaged ships. They had developed weapons capable of disrupting the aliens' advanced systems, electromagnetic disruptors, plasma-based rifles, and even prototype railguns. Now it was time to strike back. Viktor stood in the main operations room of one of the coalition's largest underground bunkers, a sprawling facility hidden beneath a mountain range in Central Asia. Around him were dozens of men and women from all walks of life, former soldiers, hackers, engineers, scientists, and even civilians who had taken up arms after losing everything to the invasion. They were tired but determined. A massive holographic display dominated the room, showing a detailed map of Earth overlaid with data about alien movements and human resistance efforts. Red markers indicated alien ships and bases. There were far too many for comfort, but there were also green markers, coalition cells preparing for coordinated strikes around the globe. The aliens believe they've already won, Viktor began, his voice steady but firm. They think we're broken, scattered remnants incapable of mounting a real defense. They're wrong. He gestured to the holographic map as he continued. We've identified a critical weakness in their operations, their command relays. He pointed to several red markers clustered near major cities. These structures are responsible for coordinating their forces across entire regions. If we can take them out, we'll disrupt their ability to respond effectively. A murmur rippled through the room as those gathered exchanged glances. It was an audacious plan. Some might even say suicidal, but audacity was all they had left. Our teams around the world are ready, Viktor said. But this operation hinges on one key strike. Here, he zoomed in on a marker near what used to be Berlin, a massive alien structure that loomed over the ruins of the city like some nightmarish monolith. This is their primary relay for Europe, Viktor explained. It's heavily guarded by drones and ground forces. But we've developed countermeasures specifically for this mission. He turned to one of his lead engineers, who stepped forward to explain further. The engineer outlined their plan, a multi-pronged assault involving stealth drones equipped with EMP payloads to disable defenses, followed by ground teams armed with disruptor weapons to infiltrate and destroy the relay from within. It would be dangerous. Many wouldn't make it back, but success would deal a significant blow to the invaders' operations. As preparations continued late into the night, Viktor found himself alone in his quarters for a brief moment of respite. He stared at a small photograph on his desk, a picture of his parents taken years ago during happier times in Novosibirsk. They were gone now. He hadn't heard from them since the invasion began. "I'll make it right," he whispered softly to himself before returning to work. The next morning, Viktor joined his battalion, a mix of seasoned fighters and fresh recruits, as they prepared for their mission near Berlin. Despite everything they'd been through, there was an air of determination among them, a shared understanding that this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about reclaiming their planet. As they boarded transports bound for Europe under cover of darkness, Viktor addressed them one last time. "We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone who can't fight back. For our families, our friends, for humanity itself." And with that, they set off into the unknown, a small but resolute force determined to prove that humanity wasn't finished yet. The battle ahead would test them in ways they couldn't imagine, but Viktor knew one thing for certain. No matter how advanced or powerful their enemy might be, humans were nothing if not resilient, and sometimes resilience was enough to change the course of history. The Coalition's war room was a hive of frantic activity. Holographic displays flickered with data streams, maps, and alien fleet movements. Viktor Ivanov stood at the center, his sharp eyes scanning the chaos with the calm focus that had become his signature. Around him, scientists, engineers, and strategists debated furiously, trying to find any edge against an enemy that seemed invincible. The alien forces had decimated humanity's strongest defenses, leaving only scattered resistance cells and the Coalition to carry the fight forward. Every day brought new challenges, new losses, and yet Viktor remained undeterred. The latest reports were grim. The aliens had begun deploying ground forces in key regions, massive biomechanical constructs that moved with eerie precision. These machines were impervious to most human weaponry and emitted a low-frequency hum that disrupted communications and even caused nausea in nearby soldiers. It was clear the invaders were tightening their grip on Earth. Time was running out. Viktor leaned over a terminal, pouring through intercepted alien signals and battlefield telemetry. His mind worked like a machine, processing data faster than anyone else in the room. He knew they needed something unconventional, something the aliens wouldn't anticipate. "Think," he muttered to himself. "What are we missing?" It was then that one of his lead researchers, Dr. Elena Markov, approached him with an unusual idea. She was holding a tablet displaying a series of waveforms, audio frequencies captured during an alien drone encounter. "Viktor," she began hesitantly, "I think we've found something strange." He looked up intrigued. "Go on." "These waveforms," she said, pointing to the screen, "were recorded by one of our scouts during a skirmish in the Carpathian Mountains. The drone emitted these frequencies when it detected our team, standard echolocation-like pulses for targeting. But here's the interesting part. When a swarm of bats flew through the area, the drone's behavior changed." "Changed how?" Viktor asked. It hesitated, Elena explained. Its targeting systems faltered for a few seconds before it recalibrated and resumed its attack. "I've been analyzing the audio data from that moment, and I think the bat's echolocation calls interfered with the drone sensors." Viktor's brow furrowed as he considered this information. "You're saying their technology is vulnerable to certain sound frequencies?" "It's possible," Elena replied. "The bat's calls operate in ultrasonic ranges, frequencies humans can't hear but are incredibly precise for navigation and hunting. If their signals disrupted the drone systems, it could mean the aliens' technology is sensitive to specific acoustic interference." The room fell silent as those nearby overheard the conversation. Viktor straightened up and addressed his team. "Let's test this theory," he said firmly. "If their systems are vulnerable to sound waves, we need to find out exactly which frequencies disrupt them and how we can weaponize it Over the next 48 hours, the Coalition's labs became ground zero for frenetic experimentation. Researchers analyzed recordings of bat echolocation calls from various species, isolating specific frequencies and patterns that might replicate the interference observed in the field. Engineers worked around the clock to design prototype sonic weapons capable of emitting these frequencies at high intensity. The breakthrough came when Viktor himself suggested combining multiple frequency bands into a single disruptive pulse, a chaotic symphony of sound designed to overwhelm alien sensors entirely. "We're not just jamming their systems," he explained during a briefing. "We're flooding them with so much conflicting data that they won't be able to process anything at all." The first field test took place in an abandoned industrial complex near Warsaw, where an alien patrol had been spotted. A small team equipped with portable sonic disruptors set up an ambush under cover of darkness. When the alien drones arrived, their operators activated the devices. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The drones faltered mid-flight, their sleek forms jerking erratically as if caught in invisible turbulence. Some crashed into buildings or each other. Others simply shut down and fell to the ground like lifeless husks. Cheers erupted over the comms as the Coalition recorded its first decisive victory against alien forces. Word of the success spread quickly through resistance networks around the globe. Viktor's sonic disruptors became a symbol of hope, a reminder that humanity could still outthink its oppressors. But Viktor wasn't satisfied with small victories. "This is just the beginning," he told his team during another strategy session. "We've proven their technology has weaknesses, but now we need to scale this up." Plans were drawn up for larger-scale deployments. Sonic artillery units capable of targeting entire fleets from miles away, drones equipped with disruptors for precision strikes, even modified aircraft designed to carry massive sonic payloads into enemy territory. As preparations continued, Viktor couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd come and how much further they had to go. The aliens were still a formidable foe, but for the first time since the arrival, humanity had a weapon they didn't expect. And as Viktor stared at a holographic map showing alien strongholds across Earth, he allowed himself a rare moment of optimism. "We're not just surviving anymore," he said quietly to himself. "We're fighting back." The battle ahead would be brutal, but Viktor knew one thing for certain. If bats could adapt and thrive in darkness using nothing but sound, then so could humanity. And this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about reclaiming their world from those who thought it theirs to take. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and ozone, a testament to the chaos unfolding across the battlefield. The Coalition's attack had begun at dawn, a coordinated assault on alien strongholds across the globe. For months, Viktor Ivanov and his team had prepared for this moment, refining their sonic disruptors into weapons capable of crippling the invaders' advanced technology. Now, as the sun set behind a sky choked with smoke and fire, the battle was nearing its climax, but it was far from over. Viktor stood at the center of a makeshift command post deep within the ruins of Berlin. Around him, holographic displays flickered with live feeds from the front lines. Coalition forces advancing through shattered streets, alien drones crashing to the ground in heaps of twisted metal, and explosions lighting up the night like distant fireworks. The sound of gunfire and sonic pulses echoed in the background, a constant reminder of how precarious their situation remained. "Status report," Viktor demanded, his voice calm but urgent. A young officer, barely out of her teens but already hardened by months of fighting, stepped forward. "Our disruptors are working as planned," she said, pointing to a map projected on one of the displays. "We've neutralized most of their drones in this sector, and ground forces are pushing toward the relay tower." "But," she hesitated. "But what?" Viktor pressed. "There's resistance near the core," she admitted. "Their larger units, the biomechanical walkers, are adapting. They're shielding their systems from our sonic attacks. We've lost 3 squads trying to breach their defenses." Viktor frowned, his mind racing. The biomechanical walkers were among the aliens' deadliest weapons. Towering constructs that combined organic and mechanical components into something grotesquely efficient. They moved with an almost predatory grace, their armor impervious to conventional weapons, and their onboard AI capable of learning from every encounter. "Have we deployed the mark for disruptors yet?" he asked. "Not yet," another officer replied. "They're still being prepped." "Get them online immediately," Viktor ordered, "and tell our teams to hold their positions until they're ready. We can't afford any more losses." As his officers scrambled to carry out his commands, Viktor turned his attention back to the holographic map. The relay tower loomed at the center of the display, a massive alien structure that pulsed with an eerie blue light. It was their primary objective in this region, a critical node in the aliens' global network. Destroying it would cripple their operations across Europe and give humanity its first real foothold in reclaiming Earth. But getting to it was proving more difficult than anyone had anticipated. The aliens had fortified the area around the tower with layers of defenses. Automated turrets that fired beams of energy capable of vaporizing steel, swarms of drones programmed to intercept anything that moved, and now these biomechanical monstrosities that seemed almost impervious to human ingenuity. Almost. Viktor's thoughts were interrupted by a crackling voice over his comms. It was Elena Markov, speaking from one of the Coalition's mobile research labs stationed just outside Berlin. "Viktor," she said urgently, "we've finished calibrating the mark for disruptors. They're ready for deployment." "Good," Viktor replied. "What's their effective range?" 2 kilometers, Elena answered. "But there's a catch. The power output is so high that they'll burn out after 3 minutes of continuous use." "That's all we'll need," Viktor said decisively. "Deploy them immediately and coordinate with our ground teams for a final push." As Elena acknowledged his orders, Viktor turned back to his officers. "This is it," he said firmly. "We've got one shot at this, one chance to take out that tower and turn this battle in our favor." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in before continuing. "I know you're tired," he said, his voice softer now. "I know you've lost friends, family, but we can't stop now. Not when we're this close." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed his words. Then one by one, they nodded in agreement. Minutes later, the Coalition launched its final assault on the relay tower. The Mark IV disruptors were mounted on armored vehicles that rumbled toward the front lines under heavy fire from alien defenses. Their operators worked frantically to keep them operational as energy beams sliced through the air around them like deadly ribbons of light. When they reached optimal range, the disruptors activated with a deafening hum that reverberated across the battlefield. Waves of sound invisible to human ears rippled outward in concentric circles, disrupting everything in their path. The effect was immediate and devastating. Alien drones plummeted from the sky like broken toys. Turrets froze mid-fire. Even the biomechanical walkers faltered as their systems struggled to compensate for the overwhelming interference. It was exactly what the Coalition needed. Ground teams surged forward under cover of suppressive fire from artillery units stationed on nearby rooftops. Soldiers armed with plasma rifles and portable sonic emitters advanced methodically through enemy lines, taking down whatever resistance remained. Viktor monitored everything from his command post, issuing orders with precision as he watched events unfold on his displays. "We're breaching their perimeter," came a voice over his comms, a squad leader reporting from just outside the tower's base. "Good," Viktor replied. "Plant charges at structural weak points and prepare for detonation." As his team moved into position around the tower's foundation, Viktor allowed himself a brief moment of hope, but it was short-lived. An alert flashed across one of his screens. New alien signatures detected inbound from orbit. "They're sending reinforcements," Elena warned over comms. "How long until they arrive?" Viktor asked grimly. 10 minutes, maybe less." Viktor clenched his fists but refused to let panic take hold. He turned back to his team on site. "You've got 5 minutes to finish planning those charges," he said firmly. "After that, we hold them off as long as we can." The battle wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot, but Viktor knew one thing for certain. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. And if this was their last stand, then so be it. The final moments of the battle for Berlin were a symphony of chaos. The Mark IV disruptors hummed with such intensity that the very air seemed to vibrate, their ultrasonic waves wreaking havoc on the alien forces. Drones fell from the sky in heaps of shattered metal, and even the towering biomechanical walkers, the aliens' most fearsome ground units, staggered and collapsed under the relentless assault. Coalition soldiers surged forward, their shouts mingling with the roar of plasma rifles and the crackling energy of alien defenses being torn apart. At the base of the relay tower, Viktor's elite demolition team worked with surgical precision. They planted charges at critical structural points, each explosive meticulously calibrated to bring down the massive alien construct. The tower loomed above them like a monolithic god, its surface shimmering with an otherworldly light as it pulsed with energy. It was more than just a communications hub. It was a symbol of alien dominance over Earth, and Viktor was determined to destroy it. "Charges are set," came the voice of Captain Dmitry Volkov, leader of the demolition team. "We're ready to blow it on your command." Viktor's voice came through steady and calm over the comms. "Hold position until our forces are clear. We can't afford to lose anyone else." But time was running out. The alien reinforcements detected earlier were now descending from orbit. Massive ships that blotted out the stars as they entered Earth's atmosphere. From his command post, Viktor could see them on his holographic displays. Sleek, predatory vessels bristling with weapons and escorted by swarms of drones. They were coming to reclaim their relay tower and to crush humanity's resistance once and for all. "Elena," Viktor said, turning to Dr. Markov, who was monitoring the disruptors' performance from a nearby console. "Can we push the disruptors any harder?" Elena hesitated, her face pale with exhaustion. "We're already at maximum output," she said. "If we push them any further, they'll burn out completely." "Then we have no choice," Viktor replied grimly. "Prepare to detonate the charges." He switched channels to address all coalition forces in the area. "This is it," he said, his voice carrying an unshakable resolve that steadied even the most battle-worn soldiers. "Fall back to safe distance and prepare for detonation. Once that tower comes down, we'll regroup and hit their reinforcements with everything we've got." As coalition forces began their retreat, Viktor stayed behind at his command post, watching every move on his displays. He felt every loss like a knife to the heart. Every soldier who didn't make it back, every friend he'd sent into harm's way, but he couldn't let it show. "Not now." "Detonation in 10 seconds, Dmitry reported over comms. Viktor counted down silently in his head as he watched his team sprint away from the tower. 3, 2, 1. The explosion was deafening, even from kilometers away. A brilliant flash lit up the night as the charges detonated in perfect sequence, sending shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. The alien relay tower groaned under its own weight before collapsing in a cascade of fire and debris, its pulsing blue light extinguished forever. Cheers erupted over coalition comms as soldiers celebrated their hard-won victory. But Viktor knew better than to celebrate too soon. The alien reinforcements were still coming. "Status update," he demanded. Elena pointed to one of the displays, showing real-time data from their orbital scanners. "Their ships are deploying ground units near our position," she said urgently. "They're not retreating, they're doubling down." Viktor clenched his fists, but refused to let despair take hold. If anything, this only confirmed what he'd suspected all along. The aliens weren't invincible. They were desperate. "They're trying to overwhelm us before we can regroup," he said aloud, more to himself than anyone else. Then he turned back to Elena and his officers. "It's time for Plan Omega." Plan Omega had been a last resort contingency, a bold and dangerous gambit designed not just to repel the aliens, but to eliminate them entirely. It involved using stolen alien technology against them. Disruptor arrays mounted on retrofitted human aircraft, EMP warheads capable of disabling entire fleets, and even experimental weapons reverse-engineered from captured alien drones. But perhaps most daring of all was Viktor's plan to hijack one of their orbital ships. The idea had seemed insane when he first proposed it months ago. Infiltrate an alien vessel using stealth drones equipped with sonic emitters to disable its crew, then seize control of its systems and turn its weapons against their fleet. But now, as humanity faced annihilation, insanity was starting to look like genius. Deploy the stealth drones, Viktor ordered. Target their command ship first. We need to cut off their leadership. As his team scrambled to execute his orders, Viktor turned back to Elena one last time. If this works, he said quietly, we'll end this war tonight. The next few hours were a blur of action and adrenaline as the coalition launched its counterattack. The retrofitted aircraft roared into battle, their disruptor arrays wreaking havoc on alien formations while ground forces held back advancing units with plasma rifles and portable sonic emitters. Meanwhile, high above Earth's surface, Viktor's stealth drones infiltrated the alien command ship undetected. Using carefully calibrated sonic pulses, they incapacitated its crew before hacking into its systems, a feat that required every ounce of ingenuity the coalition had mustered over months of research and experimentation. When control of the ship was finally secured, Viktor himself took command remotely from his bunker. Target their fleet, he instructed coldly. One by one, alien ships fell as their own weapons were turned against them. Massive energy beams slicing through hulls like paper, while EMP warheads disabled entire squadrons of drones in an instant. By dawn, it was over. The last remnants of the alien fleet fled Earth's atmosphere under heavy fire from coalition forces, a humiliating retreat that marked humanity's first true victory since the arrival. On the ground below, soldiers cheered and embraced one another amid smoldering ruins, a bittersweet celebration tempered by memories of those they'd lost along the way. But for Viktor Ivanov, there was no time for rest or reflection. Not yet. In addition to driving off their invaders, the coalition had managed something unprecedented. They captured intact alien technology, including several disabled drones and even fragments of biomechanical walkers left behind during their retreat. This is just the beginning, Viktor said as he stood amidst his team in their underground lab later that day. We've won this battle, but there will be others. He placed a hand on one of the captured drones, a sleek machine brimming with untapped potential, and allowed himself a rare smile. And next time, he added softly, we'll be ready. Humanity had not only survived, it had prevailed against impossible odds, and now it held in its hands tools that could reshape its future forever. Tools born not from fear, but from resilience and defiance in the face of extinction itself.